Welcome to another outstanding podcast here in Pulaski County with the 100 Families Alliance. We have an amazing guest today, David Deere. You know, one of the funniest things that we just talked about, he's not a doctor, but I've been calling him Dr. Deere because of all of his knowledge and all of his research and all the things that he's going to teach us today. David.
That's okay.
Thank you for joining us. We will be talking about Fetal Alcohol Syndrome Disorder. Is that right? FASD. What does all that stand for? And can you just enlighten us for those that don't know what it is, and just give us some facts and data, all that stuff.
Okay, I'll do that, and feel free to jump in and stop with questions when you have them. But yeah, actually, it's fetal alcohol spectrum disorders.
Spectrum disorder.
One of the disorders on that spectrum is fetal alcohol syndrome.
Ah.
And then there are others that are alcohol-related neurodevelopmental disabilities and prenatal alcohol exposure.
Okay.
And neurodevelopmental disorder associated with prenatal alcohol exposure. So there are a lot of different long names that go with it.
So it's the fetal alcohol
spectrum.
And then fetal alcohol syndrome is a part of the spectrum.
That's right.
See, I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that word spectrum exists.
You're a doctor now.
That's right. We'll give you a doctorate. Yeah, and one that I didn't mention is alcohol-related birth defects.
Okay.
And we were talking a moment ago about that. And
yes.
In addition, what we really focus on are the effects on the central nervous system, the baby's brain and spinal cord, and the effects that it has on that. But there can be other birth defects that go with it. Other organs can be affected by the alcohol.
Yeah, that was interesting to me.
And what we know is that alcohol is the most powerful teratogen's the word they have for it. It's something that can be harmful to a baby that's developing. And alcohol is more powerful than any illegal drugs.
Wow.
You said when is that in the development stage?
Well, it's at any point in the development. We know that the neural cells that form the brain and the central nervous system begin to separate from the other cells in the embryo about day 17, 18.
So a mother
and so that's
doesn't even
like
know that.
the first day that the brain is developing.
Right.
And so that is really the worst day to drink. And how many women know they're pregnant on day 17 or 18?
Because that's the early time. I mean, the early part of your pregnancy, you don't even know.
Really, about the only women that know they're pregnant then are the ones that have been working with the doctor really hard.
They've been trying to get pregnant.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. And one thing that we really fight against, it's a real barrier for us, is the stigma that goes with this. Blaming the mom for drinking. And we know that almost half the pregnancies in the United States are unplanned.
Right.
And so it's not even enough to tell women, well, when you decide you want to have a baby, stop drinking.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
not even enough. And frankly, healthcare providers don't tell women not to drink when they're pregnant. Some do, but many still do not.
Yeah.
And so is it really a woman's fault if she drinks while she's pregnant? And a lot of times the doctors say, yeah, it's okay to. And so it's really not her fault. We shouldn't be looking down on anyone or stigmatizing anyone for that.
And so when you say, like, there are some doctors that say is it okay to drink certain things? Like, I've heard red wine is like okay to drink.
Well, it really depends on how many grams of alcohol are in that drink.
Okay.
And any alcoholic drink has alcohol in it. And most people who are drinking don't think in terms of standard drinks.
Right.
But that's what professionals, what doctors are thinking of. If they say, okay, it's okay to have a drink, they're talking about having, a can of beer or 4 ounces of wine. And what I may hear, if you tell me it's okay to have a drink a day, I may think that a 44-ounce big gulp of vodka is okay.
It's okay.
That's one drink.
Right.
Well, it's not what they're talking about. And there's been plenty of study that show that even low-level drinking can have an effect on a child, even if they don't qualify for a fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, or FASD, which is what we'll refer to that today. That's the shorthand.
Okay.
Even if they don't have FASD, there can be some problems with the baby habituating. That means getting on a wake-sleep cycle and feeding cycle. They may have more trouble nursing.
Right.
They may have more colic. So there can be problems even if it doesn't rise to the level of an FASD. So unequivocally, the best message is no alcohol during pregnancy.
When will a parent or a doctor, when will they know if a baby is suffering from the FASD?
That's a great question. In a few cases, they may know at birth, but those are the cases where the babies are most profoundly affected.
Okay.
Often we associate facial features with fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, but really it's only FAS, fetal alcohol syndrome, where they have the facial features. And features that we look for, and the average person may not even pick this up, but the opening for the eye between one corner and the other is a little smaller. And the philtrum, which is the indentation right under your nose, is a little smoother. And the upper lip, or the vermilion, as it's called, is thinner, not as thick and full.
Oh.
Those are really the primary features they look for. There are some others that may be present,
Okay.
but those are only in 10 to 12% of the cases. And those are the ones where they might identify that they have an FASD at birth.
Okay.
All the others, it's going to be later, and in our diagnostic clinic that we have, really before they're age 3, it's really difficult to make a diagnosis.
Really?
One of the things that we have to look for the diagnosis that we can give that's not fetal alcohol syndrome is that they are delayed developmentally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, how delayed is a newborn?
Right.
There are things we look at that may be indicators that they're delayed.
Like if they're not crawling at a certain age or,
Right.
okay.
But-
Isn't there a
Well,
trick where you can like touch the bottom of their foot and they move it or something?
Oh,
Right,
yeah.
there are primitive reflexes,
Yeah.
we call them, that
Primitive
that they
reflex,
look
that's
for.
what
And if all babies have those when they're born, but they're supposed to lose them, depending on the reflex, at certain stages of development. And so if they haven't lost those primitive reflexes, then that could be an indicator. And if a baby doesn't smile at their caregiver, and if they're not tracking things with their eyes, those
Yeah.
are all things you can look at really early. And sitting and walking and crawling and all those things are developmental milestones. But a lot of things can cause those. And so for us to say,
To find if it's
it was
FASD,
the alcohol
yeah.
exposure that causes this, you have to get into a little more advanced behavior.
Okay.
And what we're really picking up on are a lot of, the long word is neurobehavioral disorders or delays. And it basically means behavior issues that are based in the brain.
Okay.
And there are quite a few of those that we see with FASD. And those tend to be there even when other things aren't, even when the facial features aren't. Some people have learning problems, other people don't. Some of them may be the most advanced kids in the class, but still have the behavior problems that go along with it.
Okay.
And some of those, probably the most common behavior cluster that we see are the things that are associated with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Okay. So the ADHD.
ADHD, being very
Okay.
hyperactive, having trouble focusing. Things that involve the part of the brain that's called the frontal cortex. And that's where we call them executive functions are located. And that's a person's ability to delay gratification. I can put off something in the present because I know I'll get it in the future.
Okay.
Having impulse control,
Right.
You know, I think and then I act and then I think about what I did later. That's a
Wow.
feature of it. Just decision-making in general. An area that we call working memory is part of that, and that's an ability to put everything together to make a decision in a split second.
Mm-hmm.
Things that you don't even think about, that if something happens, you act and react in
Yeah.
a certain way. And they may have the ability to do that, but it may take them 5 or 10 minutes to put together the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Well, by then, they've already reacted,
And it's too
and they've
late.
already often reacted in a way that gets them in trouble,
Right.
doing something that is considered socially inappropriate or violating the rules. They really have trouble understanding rules,
Mm-hmm.
and strangely, most of them can recite rules to you, but knowing how to follow the rule is where the gap comes in for them.
That's
And
interesting.
that really causes a problem because the parents, the teachers, the Sunday school teachers, the ball coaches say, well, they know the rule. He looked me in the eye and told me the
Yeah.
rule.
Right.
And then he didn't do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it seems to most of us just natural that if you know the rule,
That you
that you
Abide
know
by
how
it.
to know
Yeah.
how to follow
Right.
it and when to follow it. You know, learning not to run in the school, well, there are exceptions to that. You know, if there's an active shooter drill,
Yes.
they tell you to run. And take cover. Being able to sort through things like that their peers are able to do, but they're not. And a lot of times they don't understand the consequences of their actions. And so they break a rule, they get in trouble for it, and they don't learn from it. They do it again and again and again. So anyone that's working with a child that does the same thing over and over and over, gets in trouble over and over and over, and just doesn't seem to learn, that should be a red flag that we may be looking at fetal alcohol spectrum disorder.
And how do we, as educators in school, police officers, because they're going to come in contact with,
The
people
average,
with the
average age of first encounter with law enforcement is 12 years, 6 months.
What are some practical ways to deal with that, though? Especially if you know, as a teacher,
Yeah,
say as a
you would
teacher,
have to know.
What if they're in the classroom, and well, it's hard for law enforcement because they're just out, they're
Right.
doing their job. But as a teacher, you're in the classroom and you know that you have a student that is suffering from the Fasd. What's some practical ways on dealing with that in the
Okay.
classroom?
Yep.
Because you
Let
got
me-
20 kids or more.
Exactly. Well, let me back up just a little bit. What I haven't told you is how common this is. And the National Institutes of Health, which is sort of the gold standard for health services, healthcare research in the nation, funded studies, and it was published in JAMA, one of the premier medical journals in the nation. They found that 1 in 20 first graders in 4 different regions of the country had an FASD.
That's a
So
very
that classroom of 20 that you talked about, in all likelihood, one of
There's
them has it.
one. Right.
But less than 1% of them were diagnosed. So it's not just in the state of Arkansas, it's across the nation and really worldwide. There are some countries that are ahead of us, but really worldwide, we're not really identifying it, we're not aware of it, we're not knowledgeable. But in that case, if that teacher knows she has a student, that's one thing. If she doesn't, one thing we're trying to do is train schools so they might suspect that, this child is behaving like someone that might have an FASD, we should get them evaluated.
Yeah,
Right.
he doesn't understand the consequences. He
Yeah.
understand why he keeps getting in trouble.
Yeah.
I worked with a kid 20 years ago in a program. We were trying to find people that were at risk of losing their placement in the community because of a disability. And I didn't know anything about FASD at that time. I am absolutely convinced that's what this child had. And what happened in his case, he was in the CBI, Community-Based Instruction Program at the school. And as part of that, part of his community-based activity was they had him and one other student loading the drink machines in the school. That was part of their
daily routine.
preliminary
so they had
job
to-
skill
yeah.
training.
Okay.
And a teacher would go with them and monitor them while they loaded the drink machine. Well, one time the teacher didn't go with them, and guess what happened? He took about $100 out of the drink machine and spent the weekend in juvenile detention for stealing.
Yeah.
And that was a case where really the school was negligent.
As a teacher should have
Even
been.
though we didn't know he had FASD, we knew from his behavior that he was probably going to do that.
Yeah.
And having the lack of impulse control, lack of understanding consequences of your actions, all those things just made him vulnerable to that. Another thing I didn't mention is a lot of times they have trouble. A lot of the kids that we see are pretty good at making friends, but they're not so good at keeping friends. But they really want friends. And so that makes them very susceptible to peer pressure.
Yeah.
I
To
want you to
fit
like me,
in, I
so
want you to
whatever you
like-
tell me to
yeah.
do. And their peers pick up on this, that, oh, little Billy,
He'll do anything.
he'll do
Yeah.
anything, and
Yeah.
we'll put him up
Yeah.
to it. And we've heard a number of cases of kids who got in trouble because their peers put them up to taking something, shoplifting from the store, or going to buy alcohol when they were underage, and things like that, that they pretty well should know they'd get caught. Their peers knew they couldn't get away
Right.
with it, so they
Right.
put them up to it. But some things the teachers can do, a lot of it is knowing where they have problems and knowing where they're likely to get in trouble and not putting them in that
In the
situation.
situations. Yeah.
Like the kid with the drink machine, not having them ever do that by themselves.
Right. Right.
Now, are they capable of learning? Most of them can, but it's probably going to take them a lot longer than it does their peers. And often they are lacking the skills to function with the level of independence and just to perform in a lot of life situations that you would expect their peers to do.
Right.
And so there may be things that the teacher wouldn't let the student with FASD do that they will their peers, because
Okay.
they know it's going to end badly.
Yeah.
Some of
It's
them
a challenge for
some
that.
of them are never allowed to be in the hallway by themselves.
Right.
They'll pull the fire alarm, they'll do whatever comes in their mind. And as they get older, they'll learn not to do that, but they may not know when they're in elementary school not to do that. Their peers may all know it, but they don't yet know that.
Yeah.
And we tell parents, if you have a child with an FASD, you're probably not going to let them go run with their friends on the weekend and give them a curfew of midnight and expect them to come in, everything be okay. This weekend, it may be okay. Next weekend, it may, but sooner or later, somebody's going to put them up to doing something, or they're just going to make a bad decision
And get them in trouble.
and get them in trouble. And that's hard when their peers are all doing that and they're not able to do that themselves. Now, I might do that if they had an older brother that would look after them and make sure they didn't do anything that would get them
Right.
in trouble,
Yeah.
but not just letting them do that independently.
Yeah. There isn't a cure for this at all. I mean,
Not currently. There's research being done on some things that there's some promise. Right now, the research is being done in animals.
Okay.
That's the way we do research.
Yeah.
We start out with animals, and if it works with them, then we'll see if it works with humans. We don't want to subject humans to something that's just totally untested. And there are some things that are showing some promise. There are some supplements that they have given to mice and rats that have reversed some of the effects of the alcohol if they do that early after birth.
Wow.
So there could be some things on the horizon, but right now there's nothing we can do to undo what's happened.
Right.
What we can do, there are a lot of therapies that can help them build those skills and
That's
fill
what
in
I was
those
going to ask.
places.
Yeah.
We know that not all, but some kids who are exposed to alcohol prenatally while the woman is pregnant, some of them have a smaller brain. And and what happens with the alcohol exposure, the brain cells just don't all develop in the same way.
Okay.
And so their brain may be structurally different, and it may also be functionally different. So it may be a different size, it may look different if you could peer in, and we know that from some autopsies they've done with infants who died and looked at the brains, and there were things that were just different about them. The hemispheres were not neatly divided. They didn't have all the same grooves and indentations that the brain is supposed to have. But the other thing is it may just work differently. And so what we can do is we can help them to make new neural connections. Your brain is sort of like a computer circuit. And if part of the circuit's not working, you can rewire it and run those messages different places. It may not work as efficiently or as well, but it can work better than it was before. And so there are a lot of things that can be done, interventions and therapies that can be done with, and really the earlier the better that we do these. It can make a difference in that person's life development.
So it's basically just training the brain to think a different way and to react a different way.
Right.
And is it like more of just like a consistent type of way of doing things with the therapy, or readings, or like what is it that happens in therapy that can help with that brain neurology part of it?
It would be therapy that would need to be done by a neuropsychologist or a speech therapist.
Okay.
A trained professional that would know the things they can do that help develop that. And one of my colleagues, Elizabeth Cleveland, is on, we co-direct it's called the Specialty Diagnostic Resource Center. And the major thing we're doing is started out seeing children, now we see some adults as well for diagnosis. But we've started adding in training for school teachers, school personnel.
That's good.
Training for families. In fact, this coming Friday, we'll have our once a month, we call it guided conversations, where we start with a brief presentation on a topic for families and then open it up for the families to teach one another.
That's good.
You know, I have an older kid, and this is what worked for us, and
Yes,
that's often the very best thing for families, more than the experts telling them how to do things.
Yeah.
It's other parents helping them.
That's so good.
But they are also at the University of Central Arkansas in the speech and hearing program. Elizabeth is working with graduate students, training them to do the interventions with the group. And they've worked with a group of 4 young adults this summer, helping them develop social skills and working on job readiness. And a lot of that is working on the soft skills. I know you're working with people, adults, people coming out of prison, and with families in the 100 Families program,
Yes.
helping them to become employed. And you probably are aware that one of the biggest things that stand in the way of people keeping a job, maybe more than getting a job, is just the interpersonal skills.
Yes.
Showing up on time, getting along with their coworkers.
Yes.
So those are some of the things they've been working on this summer, is trying to give them the social skills
That is awesome.
and the job readiness.
How do we refer, or can you tell our alliance, because we have a lot of members of the alliance that are in the community, whether they're agencies, schools, teachers, individuals. How do we connect someone?
Caseworkers dealing with families.
Caseworkers. How do we connect with you? Like,
Okay.
if we know a family that may
They may think that their
think that
kid,
there you go.
is on that spectrum.
Or
Right.
even adoptive parents,
Yeah.
foster parents.
Yeah, 17% of the kids in foster care have an FASD. So, there are a lot of them, and it's probably even higher than that, but there was one study that was done several years ago that found 17%. Well, let me first issue a disclaimer. We have no money for this.
Okay.
Well, that's not really true.
We don't have money either, but
We know how to do a lot with a little, don't we? That's not really true when I say we have no money. We started the Specialty Diagnostic Resource Center, SDRC. Excuse me. We started that with as part of a federal training grant.
okay.
The training grant is to University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences, but UAMS works with UALAR, UCA, University of Arkansas at Fayetteville, and has been working with University of Southern Mississippi as part of this to train graduate students to work with people with disabilities. And so we started this clinic a couple of years ago as part of that training program. And the focus is training graduate students, but to do that, we need families for them to assess
Yes,
and
yes.
to make the diagnoses, and also how to intervene and work with the families to help them.
Right.
So we have just a little bit of funding for the faculty to work on that. I'm totally volunteer myself. I retired a few years ago and
Good for you.
said within a few years after retirement, I wanted to try to build services in the state for
Okay.
FASD. So we may not be able to respond to every request. I just wanted
I understand that.
to get that
yes.
out there.
Yes.
But we're doing everything we can, and we've gone from diagnosing a family and the family asking for training, and we give them individual training, and then asking for us to train their school that's working with that student.
Yeah.
And we're trying to move more to doing larger group trainings, just so we can reach more people.
Okay.
And that's what the guided conversations that we're doing for the families once a month on the first Friday of the month. And we did a training for school personnel this summer, and we're
Okay.
planning to do more of those through this year. But the way to get in touch with us is to go to Specialty Diagnostic Resource Center.
Okay.
If you Google that, you'll find it. If you put in SDRC, you get something, I think,
Totally
related to engineering.
Okay.
But
So you have to spell that out, especially.
if you spell that out in a search,
Okay.
in Google search or any search engine, it will take you to the website for SDRC where
Okay.
we're doing these activities. Now, the other resource that people should know about is Arkansas None for Nine.
None for nine.
None for nine.
None for Nine is in no alcohol for the 9 months during pregnancy.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
And-
we're going to have this information in our little chat box or wherever we
Okay,
put it.
yeah, and I can give you
So,
the
yeah, that'll be
URLs
great.
for all this.
It's okay.
Arkansas None for Nine is a nonprofit group
Mm-hmm.
that's dedicated to providing, to helping prevent fetal alcohol exposed births,
Okay.
and to provide support and training for families and professionals. It's really the same thing we're doing with SDRC.
Mm-hmm.
They go hand in hand, but they're separate entities.
Okay.
And so if you go to Arkansas None for Nine, all spelled out, the word Arkansas spelled out, nonefor9.org,
Okay.
that takes you to that website.
Good information. Great.
That's good.
And there's a national organization called NOFAS, National Organization on Fetal Alcohol Syndrome, and they're going to change their name sometime in the next couple of months, I think.
Okay.
But right now it's NOFAS. They may just add a D on the end to look more at the spectrum instead of just fetal alcohol
Gotcha.
syndrome, which is what
Yeah.
they started out. But nofas.org,
Okay.
NOFAS.org, has a world of resources available. And Proof Alliance is another group that has a lot of good resources.
Okay.
And they have a really good website. They're out of Minnesota. And Arkansas None for Nine and Proof Alliance are both state affiliates of NOFAS. So they have affiliates not in every state, but in most states.
Right.
And Arkansas None for Nine is the one in Arkansas.
Okay.
And Arkansas None for Nine has an annual conference. The one for this year is coming up on September 9th.
That's soon.
Yeah, it's
Gosh, it's already
about
August.
5 weeks away.
Yeah.
It's,
Is it
Yeah.
via Zoom or is it with
right
everything going
now,
on?
it's planned to be hybrid. You can either go in person to Pulaski Tech,
Okay.
or you can participate through Zoom.
Okay.
We're not sure what will happen, given the last month in Arkansas.
I know.
We
Yeah.
may, the keynote speaker is coming in from Indiana. It's a man who has adopted several children. He has 2 adult sons with fetal alcohol syndrome who are coming in to
Oh,
present with
wow.
him. One of them is an outstanding runner and qualified for the Boston Marathon.
Oh, wow.
And they don't have a separate route into that for people with disabilities. He qualified like everybody else on time
Good for
to be
him.
able to run in the Boston Marathon. And
Wow.
so, and I talked with him this past week with the father, Craig, and he's planning to come regardless. If we have to cancel the in-person part, he's going to come, and we'll have a handful of people there to make it more natural for his sons to be talking to people and not just to a camera.
That is so good.
And
That's
and then we also have a couple of local people. We have a psychologist, and then Elizabeth Cleveland that I mentioned
Yes.
earlier is going to present in the afternoon.
that is so good.
So we hope people will join us for that.
And that's on the website. That information about the conference in September is on the website. So they
Right.
can go there and just click on that.
Right.
That's good.
Yep.
Well, Dr. Deere,
Yeah.
we have enjoyed you, seriously, David. We have enjoyed your time, your knowledge. I mean, I'm sure that the Alliance has just got a wealth of knowledge today and probably have some questions even
Well,
after
we
this. But
we welcome those.
Thank
and
you.
They can certainly send those to us, and we'll do our best to answer them. I realize that a lot of what I've done is talking about what this is, and probably a lot of the folks would like for me to have gotten into more detail on what do I do when my child does this?
Yes.
Does A, B, or C.
Well, guess
But we can get them connected with us to help
that's
them
good.
learn how to do
That's what I
that.
say. Can they and we'll have you for our Alliance meeting. So
Right,
there'll
right.
be a lot of questions then.
Okay.
That I'm sure, and you'll have a whole hour, to talk about it. People can
Excellent.
ask questions. But we thank you for your time here today.
Well, you're welcome.
And I just know that you're doing great work, and there are a lot of families and children out there that need
Yes.
your help. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for
Yeah,
having
thank
me.
you.
I appreciate the opportunity to get the word out to anyone that I can.
Absolutely. So you've heard it here from Dr. Deere, David, about the fetal alcohol spectrum
Disorders.
disorder. Okay, there you go. FASD. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you again.